Well, welcome to Cerru's first annual Gala. As Gala co-chairs, we're delighted to welcome you tonight to celebrate the work of Cerru, the Center for Ethnic, Racial, and Religious Understanding, and to honor its creator and founder, our good friend and colleague, Professor Mark Rosenblum. I am Jim Meiskens. As president of Queens College from 2002 to 2014, I had front row seats from which to view the creation of Cerru, and with Mark's determination and dedication, Cerru has become a trailblazer in turning our diversity and the things that often divide us into positive forces for community and for personal growth. What has been accomplished will have a lasting impact on the students and faculty, not only of Queens, but far beyond. Mark's achievements are monumental. Through his teaching and actions, he has shown us effective ways to resolve seemingly unsolvable conflicts, urging us to confront them straightforwardly and courageously through deep dialogue and meaningful social action. Tonight, we thank Mark for the profound impact he has had, and we celebrate a legacy that will endure. We're delighted that you've joined us this evening.
I'm Sue Henderson. I'm co-chairing this with Jim Meiskens. Currently, I serve as the president of New Jersey City University, and we're over that way, and Queens is this way. The thing that's true about both our institutions is that we serve very diverse populations. And in a day like today, with what our country's going through right now, I am so delighted to have institutions like Queens College and NJCU, because I think we are forming what is the future of this country. It is our greatest strength, is our diversity. Jim mentioned that Cerru, the impact that Cerru and Mark had on Queens College. Well, it's actually had an impact on NJCU, because through his Ibrahim program, some of our students have had the opportunity to travel abroad and be with other students from other cultures and other understandings. It's been a real experience for us. Without the vision and expertise of people like Mark, we find ourselves retreating from the diversity that's around us and retreating into our bubbles with like-minded homogeneity. Mark and Cerru have shown us the way out of these bubbles and how to gain a deep understanding of the other and to find common purpose advancing forward. It is these accomplishments and the hope for our future together that we celebrate tonight. Welcome to tonight's festivities.
One thing that I vowed I'd never do in introducing someone is to say that he or she needs no introduction. Yet, tonight, that's exactly the right thing to say. Mandy Patinkin needs no introduction. We all know that he's in the TV series Homeland. We know that he starred in the theater, concert, stage, film, television, and as a recording artist. And if I attempted here to list all the things, all of his accomplishments, you'd say no one person could possibly have done that. But he did it. And along the way, he won an Emmy for Outstanding Lead Actor in a Dramatic Series and a Tony for Best Featured Actor in a Musical. But there's one thing I want to tell you that you probably don't know. Before he attended Juilliard, he attended the University of Kansas. Now, why do I say that? That's a very important thing to me, because some years ago, I was the Dean of Arts and Sciences at the University of Kansas, and one of my most successful lines in trying to convince potential donors to give to KU was to remind them that the great Mandy Patinkin was one of our alumni. But be that as it may, for all of his accomplishments, what truly stands out is his commitment to make the world a better place. He traveled to Greece to help refugees from war-torn Syria. He supports Doctors Without Borders, Americans for Peace Now, and many, many other charities. And in all of his endeavors, he has, and I use his own words, wanted to help create opportunity and better systems of living to give freedom, justice, dignity, and quality of life to humanity around the world. Please join me in welcoming Mandy Patinkin.
I don't know if those of you who came in early, Mark had been walking around for quite some time with his backpack on, and we had to encourage him to maybe put it away and let himself be honored and enjoy the festivities of the evening. And so I'm glad to see you without your backpack. I can't tell you how privileged it is to be with a group of people like yourselves who are concerned about the fragility of humanity worldwide, the most vulnerable among us, those who are thought of as other. I am proudly an other in every imaginable way. I think to be other is to be the best possibility that this world has to offer. The last thing I want is to be like everybody else. My wife, when I met her years ago, gave me a poem which has been engraved on a little piece of metal. It's a touchstone, a little what do you call it? A sterling silver little like this. You keep it in your pocket. And it's a poem by E.E. Cummings, which is to be nobody but yourself in a world which is doing its best night and day to make you everybody else means to fight the hardest battle which any human being can fight and never stop fighting. This evening is about not, and Mark would be the first one to say, it's not about Mark. It's not about any one person in this room. It's about education. It's about communication. And it's foremost about listening. I consider listening the lost art to epidemic proportions on a global level. The fact that we do not know how to listen to our elected parental body of our own country, that they display a character of obstinance, insensitivity, arrogance, rudeness, and words that are beyond my imagination, a behavior that you would never allow yourselves to even consider in front of the children in your family. And yet this is how some of our leaders behave with each other and spread this idea of behavior around our country and all over the world. But I'm not worried. I'm not worried because I just had the privilege of having a conversation with Batul, who is graduating this year, correct? I'm not a very good MC, Batul, because I don't know what I'm supposed to do up here. In other words, I have to look. I don't introduce you. Oh, you get introduced later by me. Right. I'm introducing someone else. So I'm just going to say, though, what a privilege it was to sit for these past few moments and ask Batul everything I could possibly ask in a few minutes. There are so many students that touch Mark's life, that he gives himself in ways that are just inconceivable. If you have a roll of nickels, put them into Mark Rosenblum. Because once you get him going, if you're lucky, he'll never stop teaching you. He has been my teacher since the day I met him, and someone, when I walked in, says, well, when did you meet Mark? And I couldn't remember, Mark, because I feel like it's been forever. I don't remember a day that you weren't in my life. I don't remember a day when I have been faced with endless choices and decisions about what causes I appear with, what events I attend, what I'm going to say, how I'm attacked because I might sign this petition or that petition, what group hates me today or tomorrow, and how do I maneuver myself in this sea of humanity that is sometimes not very sensitive to the possibilities that are infinite. And you never shun me off. You never can't find the time to spend a moment on the phone or in person with me or my family. You are, as my tradition says, a great tzaddik, a great teacher. Every student whose life you touch from this university, from this extraordinary program, is the exact answer to the hope and the prayer that all of us in our country, which is rather fragile at this moment, and the world at large, have courage, have faith. Mark and Cerru and any other organization Mark and his students will become a part of is the lifeblood of the future of the world. And we are blessed to have all of you. Those who fund it, those who teach it, those who learn it, and those who give it to everyone everywhere they go. So, thank you, Mark. I will now take this moment to introduce Hadass and Maher. And forgive me, I don't want to just babble on because I didn't have a chance to talk to Hadass and Maher like I have to Batul. So I would love Hadass and Maher to come and speak and share and give us yourselves and let us feel lucky to know you. Thank you. Thank you. Hello. Thank you.
Mark, it's so great to be here. I'm Dasi.
I'm Meher, and I thank you everyone for being here and for giving us the honor to honor Mark tonight.
And something that we learned tonight, as of, an hour ago, Meher, is that the two of us have somehow been solidified in Cerru lore as some sort of power couple of some kind. We've been introducing ourselves to people we don't know, and they'll be like, oh, you two. It's like, you're more beautiful in person, right? Anyway.
I know you. And I'm like, oh, okay. That's great.
Anyway, we were talking about how this is really great, actually, that the Cerru lore has somehow solidified us in some way, and we want to talk to you about that story a little bit. And I want to start out by giving Meher the mic to tell you what happened when she came to meet me tonight.
So I came tonight to give Dasi an invitation to the first Muslim wedding she'll ever be attending, which is mine. And we couldn't, thank you. And that wouldn't have been possible if it wasn't for Mark and if it wasn't for the Center for Ethnic, Racial, and Religious Understanding, which is where my relationship with Dasi and our dear friend Lara was born. And so, I'm going to let Dasi carry on.
This is how it works. We just constantly step back because we were trained as facilitators to step back. So just constantly offering the mic to each other. So Meher and I met at the Queens College Library. How many years ago? 7 years ago. And our relationship wasn't always as rosy as it is now. We didn't always coordinate our lipstick and outfit colors. That wasn't the case always. Because on the surface, there was nothing that we had in common.
And I think that if it wasn't for Cerru, we never would have wanted to sit down, have a conversation, and find out what it was that we had in common to make her a friend dear enough for me to invite to my own wedding. And I think it really starts with Professor Rosenblum, and because he is really the mastermind behind Cerru, and he is the motivational push for us to be able to say, it's okay for me to have this conversation. It's okay for me to sit down, listen to you, give you a space, let you articulate yourself, and then take this forward. Professor Rosenblum was the only professor who was okay with standing with me after a 3.5-hour class to have another hour-and-a-half conversation about completely random things. He was the only professor who tried to bring everything we learned in the classroom to real life for me. Introduced me to Izzadina Bulesh, to the Chris Tucker from ARC, gave me incredible opportunities to represent myself and my religion and my faith and my diversity on panels in different ways to facilitate dialogues. It's Mark's ability to connect with his students on this deeply personal level. And this is exactly what the organization, the Center for Ethnic, Racial, and Religious Understanding, has taught so many of us in this room to be able to do as wonderfully as Mark taught us to do them.
Now, we're both doing different things. I was ordained in June as a member of the clergy in the Orthodox Jewish movement, and I'm currently working. Did you see how hard it was for me to articulate what I was saying without saying rabbi? So that's what I am. I hopefully will be joined this Shabbat by Meher, who will come visit me in Potomac, Maryland, where I'm the assistant spiritual leader in a congregation. And Meher, what are you up to?
So ever since I left the Center for Ethnic, Racial, and Religious Understanding, which is very much a non-for-profit organization, I have been leading the non-for-profit world in the Muslim sector in the state of New Jersey and New York and some parts of Pennsylvania as an executive director and in the field of development, which is something very up and coming in the Muslim world because not a lot of people are doing non-for-profit development. And with the rise of refugees entering the country, that's really what I've been focusing on for the past 2 years. And my ability to do this work was made possible by my ability to be a decent, semi-decent facilitator in a dialogue. It was done because I was able to have a volatile conversation without losing it in a facilitated safe space. It was done because of friends like Shifa and Lara and Batya and Dasi and Batul who made it possible and made it okay and made it comfortable enough for me to start doing this on a professional level.
And just a final word. Thank you, Mark, Professor Rosenblum, and the center, and everyone in this room for teaching us that raising the temperature is not a bad thing in a room and in a conversation. And I think I was disillusioned when I was invited at some point as an undergrad to a dialogue conversation because I said, oh, it's just going to be this beautiful thing where like a hijab-wearing Muslim woman and an Orthodox Jewish lady who both like feminism will sit and laugh and like everything will be fine. No, that wasn't the point. The point was to raise the temperature in a way that held us both, a way that we could both feel heard and make the world a slightly broader and more beautiful place. So with that, we just offer so much gratitude, the two of us, not only for the skills you gave us as facilitators, but for our friendship. Thank you so much.
So I didn't have the pleasure of working with Mark, but I did have the pleasure of seeing the fruit of his labor and the fruit of the work of all the Cerru family. So if you were a fellow, are a fellow, or were an alum, can you please stand really quickly? Wow. Go ahead and have a seat, thank you. Yeah, so I mean, there were a lot of, we see the fruit of that here today, you know, out, still in New York, still sort of keeping that legacy going. And you know, Paulo Freire once said, dialogue requires an intense faith in humankind. Faith in the power to make and remake, to create and recreate, faith in their vocation to be more fully human. But you know, when your faith is lacking a little bit, you have centers like Cerru, right? When you sort of are looking at humanity and really wanting them to rise, but seeing that we're not quite there yet, you continue to support dialogue fellowships. You continue to support centers like Cerru that are doing work on bridging that gap in communication and understanding. So Cerru is a diversity education center. I'm not gonna continue on and tell you a little bit more about. So this year has really rocked us. We know that from 2015 to 2016, we've seen a a rise in hate crimes in the New York City area to 31%, which is really unheard of. So we know now more than ever, we need centers like Cerru to continue teaching people how to speak to one another, how to understand each other, and really interrogate the bias that they deal with and have dealt with on a day-to-day basis. And so this year, we really saw our fellows rise to the occasion. We saw them facilitating their faculty, peers, and staff at Queens College, at Queensborough, really facilitating these dialogues on important issues like the presidential election, like issues of race and diversity, and really, rather than, sort of when it came to the tough issues of trying to facilitate those debates, they were there to push people towards listening and push people towards understanding. And so we have two of those very fellows here today to talk about the impact that the fellowship has had on them and on their lives. So without further ado, I'm going to bring up Luce Davis to speak about her experience as a Cerru Fellow this year.
This semester at Queensborough Community College, I was given the opportunity to benefit from the Dialogue Fellowship created and facilitated by Cerru. It is an honor and a privilege to be at this gala tonight honoring Mark Rosenblum. Thank you, Mr. Rosenblum. I can proudly tell you that I am just one of the many students who has been a recipient of your vision and your work. When I think about that word vision, I think about a passage of scripture in the Bible found in Habakkuk 2:2, and it reads like this: "Write the vision and make it plain on tablets, that he who reads it may run." Mr. Rosenblum, I plan on running with the vision. I would also like to thank Sophia McGee, Dr. Dan Lesham, Marissa Hollywood, and of course our wonderful facilitators, Asia Gray and Chrissy Ramkaran. The experience has been truly insightful and eye-opening, to say the least. Before participating in the fellowship, I avoided tough conversations that I knew that they would be uncomfortable and hard to navigate. My way of dealing with it was to be silent. My fears of verbal attacks, or even worse, being humiliated, would cause me to totally shut down. So when I heard about the Dialogue Fellowship, I immediately saw it as an opportunity to learn why I had these fears and perhaps overcome them. We were given a book to read called Crucial Conversations: Tools for Talking When Stakes Are High. One of the chapters focused on safety risks and conversations. I came across these words: as people begin to feel unsafe, they start down one of two unhealthy paths: silence or violence. This was a turning point for me because I considered my silence as a good thing. For me, it kept the peace, and it kept me in a safe place. But after participating in the fellowship, it has become less intimidating to engage in tough conversations that at one time made me feel disconnected. Conversations such as race, religion, and social identities. One of the most helpful aspects of this fellowship for me was when a couple of weeks ago we were given the opportunity to facilitate our own dialogue with QCC staff, faculty, and students. The topic was, does racism affect us all? QCC is a very diverse campus, so going in I was very, very nervous. But our facilitators, Asia and Chrissy, gave us great instruction, and they gave us really good examples, and they walked us through the process. I learned to listen rather than focus on my own opinions, how to create and maintain a safe space for others, and to make sure that everyone had the opportunity to share their views. The skills I have learned during my time at this Dialogue Fellowship will remain with me going forward in my new conversations. I have found that words can hurt and wound, but when they are used wisely, they can change entire atmospheres where healing can begin. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. It's so great to see you all here in attendance tonight. I'd like to start off by extending my deepest gratitude to Professor Mark Rosenblum for creating Cerru, as well as give thanks to the Gala committee for organizing this incredible event and for allowing me to share my Cerru story tonight. So I was first introduced to Cerru my freshman year of college when I attended a meeting for the campus chapter of I Am That Girl, a club founded by Monica Roman as a part of her social change project to create more inclusive and accessible places for women within the Queens College community. From there, Monica encouraged me to participate in the annual Social Identity Fashion Show, in which I was able to tackle my perceived identity while simultaneously forming my achieved self. Immediately following the show, I applied and was accepted into the QC chapter of the Dialogue Fellowship, in which I developed the techniques needed to engage in important conversations centered around sensitive topics regarding ethnicity, race, and religion, such as Islamophobia and undocumented immigration. I currently work with Asia Gray, the Fellowship Director of Cerru, as a co-facilitator for the recently established Queensborough chapter of the Dialogue Fellowship. My reasoning behind presenting my Cerru journey through this stepping stone kind of narrative is because for me, that's exactly what Cerru and its incredible staff has provided me with. Stepping stones that have aided me and will continue to assist me in various aspects of my life. For example, I accredit Cerru for my acceptance as a Jeanette K. Watson Fellow, an IBM-funded fellowship program that is focused on cultivating effective and humane leaders, which, unsurprisingly, is a specialty of Cerru. As a Watson Fellow, I've had the privilege of interning at Point of View Documentary Films as a community engagement and education intern, in which I work to organize events across the nation so as to provide communities and organizations the resources they needed to open up dialogues and begin social action regarding issues of genocide, reworking the incarceration system, and the validity of civil commitment centers. This summer, I will be in DC with Girl Up, a United Nations Foundation campaign where I will be an organizer for their annual leadership summit, in which hundreds of girls from around the world will meet on Capitol Hill to engage in open dialogues with congressmen and women regarding issues they are concerned about. Needless to say, Cerru has provided me the skills and support system needed to unlock my passion for social change through dialogue and organization. And so I am incredibly grateful to Mark for creating Cerru, as well as the entire staff, Sophia, John, Denise, Yael, and Asia, for doing the work that they do and for providing students like me the opportunities needed to make an impact of change on the world. Thank you.
Before I introduce our next two wonderful speakers, I just want to take a moment to put forth my prayer. I can't help but do it, forgive me, but if I'm in front of alumni, graduates, students, teachers, faculty, anybody who has the opportunity to speak to one or a group of people, or maybe thousands as you go along your road, I just want to share, and I'm no great scholar, I'm not a professor, I'm just a guy, but what I've picked up. Number one is to listen. Number two is, in this polarized community, let's just take our own country, where people listen to this news source or something in the middle, if you want to call it the middle. It's a very difficult situation. I recommend to myself and to my friends, rather than criticizing what annoys me or infuriates me, ask questions. Why do you say what you're saying? Where did you learn that? Why do you believe that? I think something different. Am I wrong? What do you think about what I think? Give great regard to the opposite, polar opposite opinion. Don't put anyone down. And look for the common ground with that electron microscope of your soul. And when you find that seed of commonality, ignite it, share it, and light up the world with what you found with your supposed adversary. And forget where you don't agree, and move forward with where you do. And I also think the most important thing in my whole life, in my work, but never more important than the moment we're living at right now, is the truth. To know and search for the truth. Others will have what they believe is their truth. Ask questions, research it, encourage them to do the same. But if you believe deeply you have done your research, your homework, and you believe in your truth, in the environment we're living in, patiently put that truth out there over and over and over again. Do not get discouraged. Do not tire of it. It is our collective jobs as human beings. I just want to tell you one truth that I consider my job right now to spread everywhere in the world I can. In our own elections, I work with the refugee crisis, with the International Rescue Committee. One of the aberrations of our electoral process was to get people to vote for me or you or a mayor or a congressman or a governor or a senator or a president by vilifying others and making you terrified of them, telling you that they're going to kill you, hurt you, ruin your lives and your country, that they're not safe, saying that we have to ban our fellow human beings and all that that costs in terms of their souls. And what I have learned and studied with the experts that I have researched and found and asked to teach me is some simple facts. That the vetting process of the United States of America is the gold standard of vetting. That since 1975, 3 million refugees have come into our country. Since 9/11, 900,000. And not a single terrorist incident has taken place by a refugee in our country in all of that time. They are individuals that are homegrown, internet. This will never go away. People bring up the situation in Boston. Those were, Chechen asylum seekers. They were young kids, and in their late teens or 20s, they became radicalized. If you're a Muslim human being in the United States and you're radicalized, you're called a terrorist. If you're Dylan Roof and you become radicalized and walk into a church and kill 9 African Americans, you're called mentally ill. The fact of the matter is both people who commit those acts of violence are mentally ill. But this kind of racism is poison to our souls. And it's essential that we put out there every opportunity we can to let people know that, of course, the vetting process can be improved all over the world. The United States should be working in solidarity with countries all over the world to help them improve their vetting process so that these fragile, most fragile among us, all of these refugees fleeing wars and unimaginable conditions that, God willing, none of us will ever really know in our lifetime, but that they need sanctuary and they need to be taken care of. And so, everywhere I go, including tonight, I want people to know the truth and to share that truth. That the vetting process in our country is an 18-month to 2-year process. That every refugee who makes it through that process and comes to the United States, it's the fabric of our country, our ancestors, my grandparents, yours, all of us, that they are the safest citizens in the United States of America and not to be feared. And we have to just keep spending that energy to tell that story. And so now I would like to shut up and introduce Claudio and Batul.
It's hard to find the proper place on where to start with Professor Rosenblum. It could be the very first time I spoke with him on the phone, asking for advice on how to respond to a controversial on-campus issue that we were facing. It could be the plane ride when he sat next to me, giving me insight into a plethora of issues ranging from conflict resolution to interfaith engagement and even leadership. The time he came to the back of the bus en route Wadi Rum Desert in Jordan just to see if I was okay after a really intense dialogue. Or the final moments of the Ibrahim program that I was honored to spend with him. The last night I left Tel Aviv alone, and we spent some time at a checkpoint together. his discomfort for me having to experience it evident. But I was so grateful that he was there with me. One of my favorite pictures from the Ibrahim program is actually from that night. It's a picture I took of Professor Rosenblum as he stood there at Ben Gurion Airport, as he waited and he read the Ibrahim pamphlet, patiently waiting for me to get my luggage checked and to say our final goodbyes. My father asked of him to stay until the very end, as long as he could, and he kept his promise until the very end. I smiled while taking it, knowing that this once-in-a-lifetime opportunity would not have been the same had it not been for Professor Rosenblum. Every memory of him embodies a genuinely kind, caring, soft-spoken, father figure mentor that truly wants the best for all his students and peers. He has this remarkable gift of being able to speak to different individuals from all walks of life to the capacity of their level of understanding. Not many people can successfully cast the widest net that he does. He speaks and advises from that big heart of his, but he's also one of the best listeners I've ever met. Even if what you're saying might be radically different than not only his personal views, but what's generally accepted by society, he'll take the time to hear you out first, and then know exactly how to speak to the person that is uniquely you. My words will undoubtedly fail to do this man justice, but in these few minutes that I'm honored with here today, I want to sincerely thank you, Professor Rosenblum, from the bottom of my heart, for being one of the greatest mentors and human beings that I've had the pleasure of spending time with. I will take every priceless lesson, conversation, and words of wisdom with me for the rest of my life. Thank you.
Wow, good job, Batu. I see you. Good evening, everybody. So, Viola Davis, in her acceptance speech for the 2017 Oscars, winning actress in a supporting role for her performance alongside Denzel Washington in Fences, said, "There's one place that all the people with the greatest potential are gathered. One place, and that's the graveyard." People ask me all the time, what kind of stories do you want to tell, Viola? And I say, exhume those bodies. Exhume those stories. The stories of the people who dreamed big and never saw those dreams to fruition. Today I stand before you all to commemorate and thank Professor Mark Rosenblum for gathering the greatest students he could find and helping our dreams come to fruition. When I heard about the Ibrahim Fellowship at New Jersey City University, not once did I think I would be worthy enough to participate in the program. And when Mark approached me with the opportunity, not once, but twice, I thought to myself, this man is crazy. What purpose does a little Afro-Latino student like myself have going to the Middle East unless it is to fight in a war? But Professor Rosenblum saw the potential in not only me, but in all 15 of us. He made it his goal to break whatever social fears and ignorances we had and to redevelop our way of thinking, immersing us in not just one country's culture, but in 5. He was not only our professor, but he was our master splinter, and we were his little ninja turtles. He constantly made sure we were prepared and informed to tackle whatever questions and experiences that were to come from day 1 in New York, all the way to our departure from Israel. Each day was a memorable experience with Professor Rosenblum. I think the most memorable was seeing how he truly lived the fact that age ain't nothing but a number. A man as golden as Mark was able to climb, slide, jump, and finish a whole hike in Jabal Akhtar, while mid-course I was looking for the next shortcut back to the hotel. Whether it was experiencing the beauty of Sultan Qaboos's Grand Mosque in Muscat, or meeting a journalist who interviewed members of Al-Qaeda, or meeting Saddam Hussein's right-hand man in Jordan, or even living the split experience between Israel and Palestine. Every moment was a learning experience. Every moment was a story that Mark sought to exhume and help us understand and bring to life the good, the bad, the beauty and the beast, the reality of the Middle East. So thank you, Mark, for breaking down the wall of ignorance within me and allowing me to learn and live those stories, and most importantly, for bringing all our dreams to encounter the Middle East to fruition. Thank you.
Good evening, everyone. Okay, my name is Sophia McGee. I am the director of the Center for Ethnic, Racial, and Religious Understanding. where I obviously have some very big shoes to fill, but we'll discuss that later. In the meantime, there's one thing standing between you and your dinner, and it's highly interactive. We have a tradition at Cerru. When someone leaves us to go on to whatever is next in their career trajectory, they get a musical send-off. And so we're all going to do this together, surprise. Take your envelopes that say, please don't open yet, and you may now open them. And I invite you, there's some stories here that some of you may get and some of you may not, but all of you will certainly get the chorus. And as soon as you feel comfortable, please join us whenever we get to the chorus of our musical send-off for Mark Rosenblum, who's trying to climb under the table right now, but we're gonna get you, so sorry. I think we're gonna sing a cappella, right? Okay. Are we singing a cappella? Yeah. Okay. We're singing a cappella, so there you go. I'd like to introduce Yael Rosenstock, Asia Gray, and Sarah Kahan. This is not Broadway, we're all just having fun, okay? And Mandy, if you need to plug your ears, please do. Okay, here we go. And I never thought I'd feel this way as the water balloons flew down the hall in your favorite venue. I really thought that you would kill us, but now, with that time in the rear view, well, I close my eyes and try to think of all of us without you. And I do believe we thank you.
Keep peacemaking, keep change making, knowing you can always count on us. For sure, that's what friends are for. For good times and bad times, we'll be on your side forevermore. That's what friends are for.
No, there's still more. There's a little interlude. Fellow came up here to Queens. Rosenblum said, I'll be going. Fellow said, please. I'll be on your side forevermore. That's what friends are for.
And please, would you purchase a new suit? We are all a little spooked that you walk around in that dead man's loot. So please, if you can remember, keep peacemaking, keep change making, knowing you can always count on us. For sure, that's what friends are for. For good times and bad times, we'll be on your side forevermore. That's what friends are
Everybody.
Always count on us, for sure. That's what friends are for. For good times and bad times, we'll be on your side forevermore. That's what friends are for.
I just want to say, I was sitting here listening to all these beautiful, wonderful future leaders of our world and being surrounded by them and feeling safe and hopeful. And I had a a flash that hit my head. I just realized who Mark reminded me of. When I was, I think, how was I? Was I 33? I think 33 or 34 years old. I was trained to sword fight by a man named Bob Anderson, who did all the Highlander movies, but he also did a movie called The Princess Bride. And I worked with two masters. Bob was the Olympic British master, and I also worked with Henry Hartunian for a couple of months, 4 months in New York from Yale. And both of these guys were in their well, Henry was a little younger, but Bob, who I worked with for months in England while we were shooting The Princess Bride, was in his mid-70s. And I was 30-something. And you just didn't have the nerve to ever say to Bob, after he'd rehearse you for 10 hours straight every day for about 4.5, 5 months, Bob, I'm tired. I gotta put the sword down and just take a rest, because Bob never got tired. Bob never quit. Bob had more energy than any human being I ever met, and Bob made me be just what William Goldman wrote down in that script: the greatest sword fighter who ever lived. And may I give you the greatest sword fighter of humanity who ever lived, Mark Rosenblum.
Really? You have nothing better to do? Where are you people from? So the good news, as you can hear, is I'm not going to be able to talk too loud or too long. Many people don't realize that in an important birthing happened 70 odd years ago, as I sit here with Part B Social Security. And my mother was very thrilled that she had finally a son. She yelled out on the top of her lungs, "It has something." And she dangled me around apparently for an hour. And the truth is, my mother had a child that didn't speak really for 7.5 years. I had a terrible stuttering problem. I had terrible ear problems with surgery. I wasn't either a speaker or a listener. I was 0 for 2 in entering the planet. My mother, by the time I was 13, was yearning for the good old days of quiet. I certainly made up for it, I realize. But I did want to say a few words, in spite of the fact that this is the first time I'm actually able to speak in 55 hours, because I lost my voice. And I've been drinking disgusting lemon ginger tea that's so thick for the last 48 hours that I don't know I can keep it down. But I will make it through a few moments with a comment or two. It's been said, and I think wisely, that to teach is to learn twice. And to teach at Queens College with presidents like Jim Meiskens and fellow Rodriguez is to learn and never stop learning. They were two of the majestical people to work for that actually revived my interest in teaching. And Jim Meiskens took a proposal after 9/11 that I had given to the then president of Queens College, and it was summarily rejected as being way too experimental and dangerous. I was going to bring Israelis and Palestinian young people to Queens College where they'd study on civil society issues that they could take back to their own country. In any event, he called me in. He called me in and berated me for, "Where are you? What happened to this thing?" And he immediately helped write, with the help of John, who's in the room, the inspiration John Vogelsang. And the message here really is pretty simple. No, you have to hear the whole gang, the whole gang. This is really not about me. My punchline is to talk about Golda Meir, who was once asked by her military attaché what he should do because he was being given a prize for valor. And she said, "Don't be humble. You're not that great." But there's another option. There's another option in life that I really believe, and I don't fake it because I know the truth. And that option is you can be humble, not be great, and get yourself in the midst of greater people than you and do great things with them. Everything that you've heard tonight, everything, is about collaboration. It's about working together. And at some point, you know, the tears stop when I'm listening, and I have to say, I have to set the record straight. There is a group here that's phenomenal, and I could go around the room to each and every one of them. I managed to have a small idea that I was obsessed with because it spoke to the raw nerves in my society about inequities, and having seen Palestinians guarding my mother's orchard, and a new house was being built, and Israeli police coming and whacking them and beating them up mercilessly and accusing them of being terrorists. This is now years ago. My mother ran down from her two-floor apartment with an umbrella and began to beat the Israeli police, yelling at them, "What are you doing? What are you doing?" I watched my mother do this. And the truth is, I'm homegrown, and I went to a place with magical people that had all the skills I could never harness to implement my little idea. A little idea becomes big only when it's implemented with people that are bigger and better than you in areas that you could not dream of carrying the day on. So the record needs to be clear here. The people you saw in Cerru today, and one that hasn't been acknowledged, is Stephen Appel, who's one of the co-founders here, a brilliant young man. This was really a collective effort, and my life experience trying to remember when I was 20-something would lead me to believe I fell into and searched with a group of people that had talents I couldn't dream of, and to put that energy together. I wanted to also say that when I learned to speak, I didn't learn to listen. They were separate skills for me. When I learned to speak, I went crazy. No one could stop me. I could speak till the kingdom came left and I wouldn't have noticed because I was still talking. But I never really learned to listen in a serious way with the kinds of reflective listening skills and exercises that John was responsible for, that Sophia put together brilliant classes that I had started and she made 1,000 times better, because they involved acting, they involved being engaged in role-playing and learning in an experiential, profound way. So understand that every single time my name was mentioned tonight, it was not me. It was the group. It was all these people. I don't have time to go through the list of all the things that I think I felt proudest about for our groups pulling something together that was a little bit of a rabbit out of a hat. There are a few that are quite astounding, I think. One of them was when there was a debate taking place about what should happen to the mosque or Islamic center being built down in the Wall Street area. And we decided we were going to take our facilitators and our student leaders on campus and get them engaged in this issue, to have frank discussions about what they felt about this. There was no chip that we put in their mind. We had only an agenda of what can we do to provide noise that was meaningful instead of noise that was deafening and not healing. And the students studied this issue to some extent. It was an evening driven by 5 different students that were interrogators and inquisitors of 2 people we chose that we thought might be reasonably good listeners to each other. A man who was a very high-ranking member of the fire department, who had lost his son in a police academy as the son was a first responder at the World Trade Centers, and he was leading the charge towards the building, not allowing this to be built, because his son was laying still on sacred ground. And it would be a terrible setback and discrimination against those who still had unhealable wounds for the loss on the World Trade Center grounds. And Daisy Kahn, who was one of the leaders of To Build, we brought them together, and Sue and Jim were in the room, joined by a huge, huge crowd from community and from the school. That night, I was paralyzed in imagining what I saw what was happening. We had a Muslim woman who had lost her son, who was a first responder in the police department, and no one ever mentioned his name. And instead, the police blot had written down that he was a terrorist on the site, when he was a first responder, also trying to save people's lives. This woman came to that night with a cameraman who was going to record her pains and her claims. And then somebody else came, a Russian woman that Jim will remember fondly, that brought a camera, and her son was lost in 9/11, and it was blasphemy that he didn't get the credit he needed. Both cameras were going to duel. Instead, the evening turned into a miraculous seance with both of these two representatives of opposite positions, saying really revealing things that took the steam and the power out of their own case, and they did it intentionally. Jim Rich said that when he was asked by one of the 5 Cerru trained students, all diligently prepared with sharp questions, and Jim Rich was asked, why do you not want to have this built if there is no hallowed grounds, no bodies, there's nothing left there to reclaim? Because one of the claims that his group had, there's people still there, we haven't gotten them out, you can't build. And Jim Rich said, it's clean, there are no more bodies there, there's nothing more to do in that site. You could hear a pin drop in the room. And Daisy Kahn made an acknowledgement when one of our students asked her, and when is the last time you met with a family that lost people in 9/11 that were begrudging your building? And she stood at the mic and she said, I've never thought to meet with them. That night, you had a startling crisscross, and those two people actually spent some time together. We didn't change the world, but was a program that was a sensational model. You don't have me run the program. You don't have faculty run the program. You put your trust in the brilliant students you have that do represent the tomorrow and the today already, and you put them in a position where they do diligence before they advocate. They learn before they take a position, and they understood something very deep. At this particular moment that Mandy has referred to, and several other people did, I won't be quite so coy. At this moment, we have a leader in our country with a set of unusual characteristics, an unusual personality. And I would say that our problems can be summarized by a silly little quote, meant to be humorous, but it's deadly serious. All I know is that one of us is right, and the other one is you. We have a president who is completely immersed in certitude, absolutism, and with no regard for facts except for those that he's made up. And at this moment in history, Cerru is more important than ever to not just do on the Queens College campus or several other campuses, but to go national. They have done with a skeleton crew an unbelievable job. And if you haven't given what you think you can give to Cerru, don't give to me, give to them that are doing greater work than I could have dreamt of. They need your assistance. If you've given generously, that's terrific. Let your friends know about Cerru at Queens College. The talent there is incredible, and it's got the things that you need to pull a miracle off. The magic and the miracle revolves around presidents and leadership at the college that liberated me and accepted the idea that don't wait for your students to become alumni before you ask them to do something besides money. You can now give them jobs while they're here and after they graduate right away, because they'll be 1,000 times more effective than I will be. And Jim Meiskens then proceeded to create jobs for these students that were working in Cerru and getting stipends also for those who were still students and undergraduates. In other words, they understood where the future resided. And the same goes with our current president, who has a more problematic moment to cope with, one might say, nationally and locally. So I want to, if you heard anything tonight that was compelling and moving, it shouldn't be about me. It should be about Cerru. Oh, my throat's going. The leadership on the campus couldn't do this without Yuri Cohn and Hillel. There's somebody else that represents leadership at the top. He gets much less attention, and it's absolutely essential that people understand this. Ali Murmur. Ali Murmur has worked with the Muslim Student Association, and he has been some kind of godsend. You ask the students that work with him, he teaches deep religious commitment and gives people a complicated view of what to extract from it by the literature and by spending endless hours with them. This is a man who should be a full-time teacher at Queens College and is a gift, and one of the reasons you can hear why Queens College has been successful in preempting and preventing some of the other things that happen around the country. It's not me. It's the people that are on watch all the time, from Ali, from Jim Meiskens, from Sue Henderson, the vice president. Sue pushed hard and continuously to get money for our students in Cerru and think about expanding. So I guess my closing thought would be, one of the students who came in here tonight sort of threw me for a second and asked what I'm going to be doing in my next life. Didn't I? No, I wasn't quite sure what he meant, but I gathered that maybe he was pushing in a sweet way that I continue and get my immortality for continued good works. And I looked at him and I thought immediately of Woody Allen. And if I remembered correctly, Woody Allen said, I don't want to achieve immortality through my work. I want to achieve it through not dying. So I'd like to join all of you in the next decade or two to continue to do the good work that's important. Thank you. I have one more thing to say. I do deeply appreciate it, and I'm obviously moved to tears. But I have another term that makes me feel as if I drink from the eternal youth fountain, or fountain of youth, because I do have another name. They call me Idiot Boy. True, and the idiocy is reflected tonight when you see me leave here in 15 minutes, because I have 20 students from around the United States, Muslims, Christians, Jews, everyone of all different color and ethnicity, and they're at the airport waiting to go with me for a month in 5 countries in the Middle East. So I did a wonderful calendaring. It was a calendaring boo-boo. And I guess a youthful idiot boy struck again.
Okay, there's no calendaring boo-boo. I think we were lucky to actually get Mark to sit still in one place for an hour and a half. So thank you. I mean, I know that you were leaving tonight, and I appreciate, you've been running all day. We have an award for you, of course. Yeah, come on up. No, it's real. I'm not teasing you. There's no simulation. But I might open it wrong. Here, okay. So at Cerru, we give out an award called the Uncommon Courage Award, which I'm dropping all over the place, which is an award for extraordinary bravery in a given field. And of course, the person who has always deserved this award more than anyone we've probably ever given it to is Mark Rosenblum. And so this evening, we're very honored to give Mark Rosenblum our Uncommon Courage Award, for the uncommon courage of teaching us to be able to see things as hopeless and yet be determined to make them otherwise.
Mark, eat slowly. We want to make sure you make it, safe in your travels. So since we're lucky that we have 5 or 10 more minutes with Mark, how about another big round of applause for Mark? So he gets to travel with all our love, and thank you so much. One thing that I'll mention about Mark, and people have said enough, and I could add very little, is I love the way that he shows appreciation, right? Fellow, I'm so happy you're the president. By the way, I'm retiring at the end of the year, right? So that was the news he gave me after the first year that we met, and so I feel that I get to see the great work that Cerru continues to do, and I've been blessed that I have him as an advisor in that retired capacity to guide me, to help me, to think about new projects. And so, Mark, as someone who came in new, I want to thank you for all the help that you've given me in these 3 years. And I know that you will continue to defy time travel and time zones and all those things. And I look forward to you staying, retiring, but supporting and engaging in our work in the college. So thank you so much for everything. So a big round for Mark. We have rightfully so featured the great students who've been part of a number of the programs that Cerru has sponsored in its history. We've been able to highlight also some of the leaders that help found and organize and staff Cerru, and there's more to come in that direction. But I do have to say that, unpopular as we might be, the administration of the college has always been very, very supportive of the work of the center. And I want to highlight that we have today in our audience our provost, Betsy Henry, our vice president for academic affairs. We've had our vice president for communications and marketing, Jay Hershenson, who I think has already left. We also had our vice president for institutional advancement, Lori Dorff, who also I think, and the person who first told me about Cerru, our assistant vice president for external government affairs, Jeff Rosenstock. So thank you so much for the support. When you go to President's Training 101, they say the first thing you do is to thank the sponsors. In this case, I want to begin by thanking 2 good friends who serve as the co-chairs for this gala, who didn't have to do this. It's no longer part of their duties, but it shows the kind of commitment that they have to the work that the center does, the commitment and the love they have for Queens College, and how important they know the work that we do is for higher education. So I want to ask for another big round of applause for President Meiskens, my friend Jim, and President Henderson. Jim knows this because I've had the great joy of having as a friend prior to assuming this role. And we get periodically over for lunch and we talk about things, and he's always interested in the things of the college. And I thank him. When some of the unrest on the campuses started to occur, when some of the news on other campuses of the rise in anti-Semitism came up, all the different confrontations that we've seen on campus, which is part of the national landscape, folks always said that we were not perfect, but Queens College was different. That in Queens College, the seed for dialogue, the seed to be able to be preventive of many of those things occurring, or the seeds to be able to deal with those things should they occur, have been planted. And I always said, people said, no, Queens College, you're a model. I said, I'm lucky that the people that came before me had the foresight to know this was important, to invest in it, to nurture it, and to see it grow. And my role is to make sure that it continues to grow. So Jim, Sue, thank you so much for that great gift. And please know that it is an important priority to keep going. And I hope that we can take that and, as Mark said, make it into a city, state, regional, and national model for things that other campuses can adapt and take to for them. I think that in typical Mark way, you know, even though those who work with Mark are used to the scheduling and, you know, always with a backpack and a suitcase and always running and, you know, is it a call to California? Is it a call to the Middle East? Are you in New York? But I think that Mark has been very intentional as a good mentor, as a good nurturer, as a good teacher, as he has retired, to be able to make sure that he feels the center is in very good hands, right? And I think everybody here would agree that if Mark is a unique individual, and we're so blessed to have him, right, that luckily he did his job right, and he made sure that the next phase of the center was guided with someone of incredible integrity, of incredible intelligence, of incredible passion, an incredible vision, and that we're lucky to have her with us, and that in a way that we had not planned, he wanted to make sure that as we shift the spotlight to Cerru after Mark, that he was gone to the Middle East, right? Or at least to JFK, right? And that the second part, Sophia will be able to have the spotlight to herself. And I think that that's the way that he's always mentored people, and that's the way he always finds a way to make sure that the great talent is able to be showcased and thrive. I have been blessed to have Sophia McGee as the director. I am incredibly proud of her leadership. I am incredibly proud also of her maturity in handling what could be a difficult situation. I mean, in many places when you have a transition like this, things fold, right? There's not the capacity institutionally to handle having such an important person leave. Mark worked in a very collaborative way, and that is true. But even when that happens, it is difficult. And we've been lucky to have someone who's been able to do that, but also begin to put her own mark on Cerru, right? And I think that that's always, when people talk about paying tribute to the people that came before you and set up things, that the highest compliment you can pay to them is not imitating exactly what they did, right? But imitating their model. And the model that started Cerru was grounded on conversations with the students, grounded on the reality of the culture at the time, grounded on the issues we were facing, right? And Sophia and the entire leadership group now has also done that, continue some of the things that they're doing, but saying there's some other issues that we have not been paying attention to. We need to make sure that we include them if we want to continue to be this space right, of dialogue. We need to make sure that we continue, and one of the students talked about sort of having the temperature, having the high temperature, right? And I've been, and it might be, we go to some of the meetings, and some of the college presidents, and some of them are happy that nothing is happening in their campus. And I'm always the weird other, back to you, the weird other that goes, no, that's not the campus I want. I want a campus where, maybe not too much stuff is happening, but I want energy, I want debate, I want discussion, I want the things that are needed so that we can advance, right? And they know that we needed to make sure that we were testing the temperature in some other areas, and they've done that, and I'm so happy that we have them as partners. She knows that she has our commitment in the administration to help the center grow. Mark said that coming to the presidency, I have the worst sense of timing, right, in terms of the national scene, what's happening, and the budgets in the state have not been the best ones to be able to be supportive to, but we'll find a way. This is a great institution, and I'm very, very committed to making it grow. So I have the task of introducing the current director of Cerru, a woman that we all respect, a woman that we all are so proud to have her in our campus, that has been so much part of the history of Cerru as it got started, and will continue to be part of the history as Cerru continues to evolve. So it is my pleasure to introduce Sophia McGee.
Thank you. Thank you very much for that amazing introduction. Before I talk a little bit about my version for Cerru, and I'll give you the Reader's Digest version because I know it's getting late. There are a lot of thank yous that I have to make here. I want to thank all of the fellows and all of the speakers, current alum, everybody who made it out here tonight. I want to thank Asia Gray, who I think had to leave, yes, but who is our Director of Fellowships, and Yael Rosenstock, who is our Programming Director, and really the mastermind behind this event. This would not have happened without her. She is like the meticulous planner, and I am not. So thank you. I want to thank John Vogelsang, who is one of the co-founders of Cerru. I want to thank Stephen Appel, who's one of the co-founders of Cerru and who's with us tonight. I want to thank Denise, who did not come out tonight, but she's not getting away without a major thank you, as well as Kaishwen for the journal and the invitations, and Sharon, who's here somewhere, who does all of our research and data collection somehow in like 10 hours a week. I don't know how she does that. And I'm sure there's a million other people, but I do want to thank Dr. Felix Matos Rodriguez, who is our president, and Dr. Elizabeth Hendry, who is our provost, and Dr. Eva Fernandez, who is the director. She runs everything experiential at Queens College, basically. She is the director of the experiential wing at Queens College, for their incredible support of our work. My first meeting with Fellow was like an audition. I could sense that he was trying to figure out if I could be the face of this organization, and he was right. He was absolutely right. You've now all heard from Mark, and it's some incredibly big shoes to fill. And so I really want to thank you for having faith in me in terms of taking this organization forward. One final and important thank you. As many of you know, each year Cerru brings together innovators in various fields to participate in a campus and community-wide innovation exchange. So this is a two-part thank you. One is to Stephen Appel, because really Stephen conceived and championed this event, which is an incredible event. So thank you, Stephen. The second thank you goes to Sushil Kirpalani, who wanted to join us tonight but wasn't able to, but who provided Cerru with our first ever endowment. And that endowment is going specifically to the Innovation Exchange, so that we can continue to do this incredible programming. We do this once a year where we bring people together to talk about very difficult issues for, 5 or 6 hours. It's very intensive. We've done Black Lives Matter, we've done innovations in the Middle East, we've done climate change, and then we get together in groups and we do workshops and we try to figure out how we want to engage with this issue going forward. So this was really Stephen's idea, and now with this new endowment, we know we'll be able to do it every year and also expand on it, which is incredible. So thank you, Sushil, who's on his way to Puerto Rico. Okay, when I look back over this academic year, I think that the best way to characterize it is a sprint being simultaneously run with a marathon. Yeah. And I'll be frank, the pace was greatly accelerated because of the results of our national election last November. Yael and Asia and I texted each other pretty much all night that night, trying to figure out what that meant for us, what that meant for our students, and what that meant in terms of our center and how we were really supposed to go forward. I think that from the very first moment, we've been aware of looking out for the immediate responses that our students were going to need and require, but also to try to take a step back to look at the bigger picture of how we as an organization actually fit into this national conversation. Where are we going? So the first thing that we do, and so many people have said this tonight, and Mandy, I'm so glad that you picked up on this. He's like really one of us. It's kind of amazing. We listened. We listened. We held pop-up dialogues everywhere, like from the steps of Powdermaker Hall to classrooms to everywhere, and we listened. We crashed other people's events and we listened. We listened to everyone. We listened to students whom we knew were going to be deeply affected by the 100-day platform that Trump was putting together. And, this being Queens College, we listened to Trump supporters who felt discriminated against by their own peers for betraying their ethnic groups. Being human beings, of course, all of us have our own political viewpoints, but we tried to set that aside in order to listen, even when things were really difficult to hear. And we did this because this is what we ask our students to do. We devised, and this was Asia's idea, a series of teach-ins that we've been holding over the course of the semester. We have our last one coming up this Wednesday on labor rights and organizing. And we did this in tandem with a group of faculty and students at the college. We did this in addition to all of our normal schedule of weekly trainings, other events, alongside the new fellowship at Queensborough Community College. We must have done something right because without even getting to the end of the semester's programming, we've doubled the number of people who have attended Cerru events and trainings this year, and also doubled the number of what we like to call frequent flyers, the people who actually are intensively engaged with Cerru and have maybe come to 7, 8, 9 programs, or whose face we kind of see every time. Okay, thank you. So that was the sprint part. We're sprinting. We're almost at the end of that sprint. But here's the marathon. That same evening, when we were all texting each other and election results were coming in, we were talking about just how polarized this country has become. And this is something we already knew. I'm a demographics junkie, so I've read some of the research on how the country is simultaneously becoming more diverse, more multicultural, and also more polarized into religious, ethnic, and political groups. But I think that night really drove it home like a sledgehammer. As a country, we don't know each other. And worse than that, we are absolutely uncurious about each other. We surround ourselves with like-minded people and like-minded media, and we are content. And this is tearing us apart as a nation. But that night, Yael reminded us that we really only need to look back at our mission to see how we actually fit into this. We are an organization that brings diverse groups of people together in order to dialogue around difficult and often divisive issues and to try to transcend conflicts. Actually, the thing that we are doing on campus is what is necessary at a national level. We need a catalyst to get us out of our interest groups and talking to each other in a way that builds empathy and understanding, even if it does not necessarily foster agreement. Agreement is not the goal. The catalyst, we realized, could be Cerru. So I know this sounds highly aspirational, it is, but I see it. And I see the finish line of this marathon. And this year, with your help, we're going to start. Cerru's going to take a road trip, or possibly two. We've identified 1 or 2 sister communities in other areas of the country where we would really like to go and get to know some people. This reunion won't look like what we do at the college because we will co-create that experience with our sister communities. We're not going to impose anything on anyone because that would be the worst way to start. I'm really excited to take Cerru to the next level and along the way to continue to keep Queens College at the cutting edge of work in creating inclusive communities. But this doesn't happen without the help of every single person in this room. And so I ask you, here comes the ask, if you can, to help us reach our fundraising goal. We've gone an incredible amount of the way just with this event towards raising our goal, but we still have somewhere between $5,000 and $10,000 left until we will have literally our entire year funded next year. Our entire programming at the Queens College campus, along with the promise from Councilmember Barry Grodenchik that the fellowship at Queensborough Community College will also continue. And so that will be set, that will be finished. So I hope that we will have that ability to have the programming on campus taken care of so that Yael, Asia, and I can continue to work on this national model and that we can pilot it next year. This is absolutely the moment for this kind of work. So I hope that all of you can help us continue our marathon together. And I couldn't resist this. Let's not throw away our shot. Thank you. So this brings us to the end of our evening. Sue and Jim, I don't know if you want to come up and just say goodnight and thank you. Mandy, I don't know if you want to come up. I want to thank Mandy for being our exceptional MC. I want to thank Eddie, our maitre d'. Back there, Eddie, thank you to our maitre d' and Jim and Sue. I'm going to say my thank you and turn it over.
Well, I think I can speak for all of us that our lives are better for being here this evening. It was a privilege, I know for myself, and I'm sure for all of you. This was not your run-of-the-mill benefit evening. This is something that, as they say, gave us food for our soul. So, bless you all.
Yeah, I want to thank 2 groups. I'd like to thank President Rodriguez for continuing to support this because this is so very important. I know you have 1,000 priorities and 10,000 problems and opportunities to solve, but thank you so much for continuing it. And I want to thank those of you who have gone through the program. I have always been so grateful for students who I feel like are going to do a lot to make this country stronger. And I thank you and challenge you to help us get beyond this year because I think we have a lot of opportunity.
And finally, to close out the evening, I just want to thank all of you for coming. This was an inspirational evening. I feel so honored to have been the president of this Queens College and to be at the birthing of Cerru. I know it's in good hands now. We have a great future ahead of us. Let's be a model for the country and for the world. Thank you so much for coming tonight.